and 2 boys at the ages 14 and 16. Here's Mr. Benelli.
So please welcome Jeff Benelli. Give him a hand, please.
You know, if you don't mind, I'd actually like to get this started with my favorite prayer, and it's a prayer my family prays every night. And we don't actually just say the words; we really embrace its meaning. So it's the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, here's the thing. I've given a few speeches, and tonight's about you guys. And when I'm done, if I haven't given you something that you can take home with, then, you know, I failed in my efforts. My efforts were there. But tonight is all about you. And I want you to realize that. So I hope I can give you something that you can go home with. I've given these speeches a number of times, but tonight is actually special for me because as I look out at all of you, I feel like I'm looking out at a bit of my past. Because some 30 years ago, I basically sat right where you are at a Colgan Prom. And I probably sat alongside some of your parents. I bet I was thinking things pretty much like you are tonight. That might be like, when's this old guy going to quit talking so I can go start having fun? But seriously, you probably are just excited for the night itself, to hang with your friends, go to the dance, and you know, maybe an after party later on tonight. But what you might not realize is that tonight actually holds a bit more meaning than just that. It's an occasion to mark a milestone of how far you've come in your lives, as well as a bridge to the next steps into your future. If you're a junior, you're probably envisioning a little bit of what it's going to be like to be a senior and some of the fun things that go along with that. You know, if you're a senior, you're probably starting to think of life beyond high school, what college you might attend, what career you might pursue. You know, will you someday get married, you know, have kids? There's just so much life ahead of you that it's natural to start sketching out a plan in your head as to how you want it to be and what it might take to get you there. I know that's what I did when I was your age. I had a plan in my head: college, career, marriage, family, kids. You know, I had that picture in my head of how all that was going to happen. After my years of Colgan, I attended Pittsburgh State University. And my college years were really busy. I had to work through college, and I sometimes worked close to 45 hours a week. I sometimes worked like 10, 15 at night. I was a night manager at the YMCA, and only to come home to hours of homework. But I'm proud to say that during college, I actually tried to make it to daily mass at the Newman Center as often as I could, because I think it was around your age that I realized that prayers and mass were a lot more than just words and actions strung together. They really meant something to me. So attending daily mass, if nothing else, it just gave me a time to reflect on that meaning. So after I graduated from college, I did graduate with honors, earning a bachelor's and a master's in mathematics. And I landed a fantastic job in Kansas City as an actuarial analyst. So if any of you are math people, I would highly recommend the career. I was just 23 years old at the time. My job was really intense. I spent the next couple of years either working or studying for actuarial exams. My life, again, was just extremely busy. But I found myself missing the teaching that I did when I was trying to get my master's. So I kind of foolishly took on teaching an evening calculus course at a local junior college. And I vividly remember driving to my first class. It was just this beautiful night, and you know, the windows down, and the air was rushing through, the radio was blaring, and I was just kind of reflecting on where I was in my life and how hard I had to work to get there. And I had this kind of I made it feeling to myself. And I was just 25 years old at the time. Well, that feeling didn't last very long, because over the next year or so, I started bumping into things regularly. I knocking over grocery displays, at the grocery store and turning around and then seeing them. Once, probably just once, but I hit a double and I was rounding first and trying to find second base and I couldn't find the bag. Didn't know why. I just couldn't find it, ran past it. Another time I was pitching on the pitcher's mound and walked off the mound just for a moment, turned around to walk back to it and I couldn't find it. Another time I yelled for my roommate, thought he was in the other room, and he was standing just right beside me. I was so confused. I didn't know what was going on. My central vision was still good. It was the peripheral that was starting to go. So I didn't know I had a vision problem. Well, after a series of visits with local ophthalmologists, one finally diagnosed me with this extremely rare genetic disorder called choroideremia. It's represented by CHA for short. The doctor told me that I was going to continue losing vision until complete blindness somewhere in my early 50s. And obviously, I was shocked, and I wasn't ready to hear that kind of news, so I said, no, right? I mean, science, they're going to find a cure for this before I lose my eyesight, right? And he looked at me, and he bluntly said, he goes, there are rare retinal disorders out there. And he said, what you have is rarer than any of those. He said, though it has all the characteristics of a disease that could be cured, he said, it most likely will not be, because it just doesn't affect enough people. He said, son, you're going to have to learn to live a life without your eyesight. I was just 27 years old. Over the next 10 years, I did my best to live a normal life. As we said, I got married to the most wonderful woman in the world named Julie, and I had 2 young boys, Jacob and Jordan. I lost a ton of vision during those years. I had to give up all sports. I quit going to movies. I found myself needing help walking in public. And finally, at the age of 31, I gave up driving for good. I hated being blind. I had enough vision to see what other fathers could do with their children, and I couldn't even see my son's whole faces. I could never be left alone with my children because I couldn't keep them safe. If I had to use the restroom in public, I had to ask my wife to take me there. I hated choroideremia for taking a life that I loved away from me. Because before choroideremia entered into my life, I was a happy, confident person. But now I found myself frequently breaking down in tears when I just couldn't take it anymore. I still wanted to be that confident and good person I'd always been, but the daily frustration of losing so much vision so quickly was just too great. I found myself, I had become in this continuous cycle of me trying to be that normal, good person I'd been, but failing regularly, only to regret my failures the next day. This cycle, though, ultimately created a philosophy that I still use today. The morning ritual of me beating myself up over the failures of the previous day, and then promising God I was going to do better in the day I had before me. Reflect and reset. That's what my days became. Reflect and reset. What I found was that this really was just a prayerful dialogue between God and I. And I found that the more I prayed for strength to deal with my problems, the less emotional failures I had. And I never prayed for God to cure my disease, only for Him to help me deal with it in a positive way. So that's where I was. 90% of my vision was gone, and I was going to keep getting worse until I couldn't tell the day from the night. And nobody was studying the disease, and no one was going to. Now, back in Colgan, when I was here, before in Mass, before games, football games in Mass, we used to sing a song, and it had the words in it, "It only takes a spark to get a fire going." Well, that spark for choroideremia came with 3 individuals on the East Coast who founded the Choroideremia Research Foundation, started from scratch in August of 2000. And I think I connected with this group like a year later. And when I would contact someone from the Choroideremia Research Foundation, this guy would always say, hey, have a wine tasting or a garage sale. Try to raise some funds to help research for choroideremia. And I would always leave and say, oh, come on, there's no way a silly garage sale or a wine tasting can ever raise the funds to cure disease. It would be a token gesture at best. But nonetheless, I finally decided to run a marathon as my token gesture. So I trained extremely hard, and I sent out over 300 letters to every friend, family member, and coworker I had. And when all was said and done, my network generated over $28,000 for that race. That made me realize two things. First of all, there is no such thing as a token gesture. And secondly, and more importantly, there is no they group out there to solve our problems. If problems are going to be solved, it's I as an individual who has to make it happen. This was the beginning of a new chapter in my life. I found that the harder I trained and the more I pushed myself, the less my depression consumed me. I was making a difference with the positive energy I was putting forth, which left less room for the negative feelings. Believe me, I failed regularly with bouts of anger and depression, but it was less the harder I worked. I spent the next 9 years training and running in 10 marathons. I ran hard and I ran alone, with only enough vision to see the one bobbing head in front of me. My life again was so incredibly busy. I was working full-time, trying to be an engaged and active father, and now on top of all that, I was training 6 days a week, giving speeches, and actively fundraising. Now, more than ever, I needed that morning ritual of reflect and reset. Truth be told, I was just asking God to give me the energy to do the good that I was trying to do in the day that I had before me. And I'm here to tell all of you that those prayers work. I was becoming a better father, and I was making a difference, a positive difference in the world. To date, my marathon efforts generated close to $200,000 for the choroideremia cause. I'm a board member and I'm a second vice president of the Choroideremia Research Foundation. And I was even part of a 5-member team that went to Washington, D.C. and spoke before the Food and Drug Administration. Currently, there are 5 clinical trials out there across the globe that have hopes in the next few years to find some kind of treatment for choroideremia. It's not the end, but it is the beginning. And my 17-year-old nephew has this disease, so it's important this happens. Okay, at 51, yes, I'm that old, I have only 1 degree of vision left. I can't drive. I can only see about 1 or so inches on a computer screen, or maybe 1 word on a printed page at a time. If you cup your hands like that and peer through it, that's kind of what I can see, approximately 1 head or so at a time. And yet, here I am before you to tell you that I blame no one, and I'm mad at no one. And I rarely complain about my disease. Obviously, a lot has happened in my life since I attended my Prom 33 years ago. The plan I sketched out in my head is not at all actually what happened. Losing my vision has definitely not made my life more fun. It's made it extremely hard. But it has led me to a life philosophy that works in complete harmony with God if I allow it. In constant prayerful communication with God, I reflect upon my previous day, and I try to understand what led to my character failures. I guess you could say I ask God for that wisdom. I specifically ask God for the energy and the courage to do good in the day I have before me. And finally, and most importantly, no matter how the day goes and what life events might challenge me, I thank God for the serenity to deal with it in a positive way. I pray that each of you here tonight, as you travel in your own life's journey, that no matter what challenges you are faced with, that God grants you the wisdom, the courage, and the serenity to deal with them in a positive way as He would want you to. Thank you.